We'll call the meeting to order, and when you're ready, we'll take the roll. Mr. Brennan. Present. Mr. Fargus. Present. Ms. Clayton. Ms. Herbert.
Here.
Representative Howard. Mr. Lawson. Dr. Morris. Mr. Smith. Here. Mr. Racio. Here. Mr. Unthank.
Here.
Mr. Walker. Advisory members, Mr. Kane. Mr. Green.
I'm here.
Mr. Kuhn, Ms. Robinson, Ms. Summers. You have a quorum. Thank you. That brings us to item 2, the adoption of the agenda. I'll look to staff to ask if there's any proposed changes or updates to the agenda. Seeing and hearing none, is there a motion regarding the agenda?
Second.
All right, moved and properly seconded. We'll take the roll to adopt the agenda. Mr. Brennan. Yes. Mr. Burgess. Yes. Ms. Fleet. Ms. Herbert.
Yes.
Ms. Howard. Mr. Lawson. Dr. Morris.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Racio. Yes. Mr. Unthank.
Yes.
Mr. Walker. Motion carries. Okay. That brings us to item 3, our consent calendar. 3A is the approval of the March 27th, 2024 board minutes on pages 3 through 5. And 3B is the invoice check registers on pages 6 through 23. Is there a motion regarding consent items?
Good.
Moved and properly seconded. We'll call the roll for the consent calendar. Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
Mr. Burgess?
Yes.
Ms. Gleaton? Ms. Herbert?
Yes.
Ms. Howard? Mr. Lawson? Dr. Morris?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Racio? Yes. Mr. Unthank?
Yes.
Mr. Walker? Motion carries. Thank you. That will bring us to item 4, our Midlands Transit Riders Association update. Mr. Seymour, you have 2 minutes, and I also saw that you signed in on the form. Since you're on the agenda, you don't necessarily have to sign on.
Oh,
okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak again, and thank you, Ms. Bowers, again for sending me the information on the represent. Mr. Pearl, I really enjoyed your op-ed in the Panorama on the importance of the penny tax. Issue I'm actually going to address today is the announcements made when the buses arrive, or rather the system. This has been a problem sporadically over the years, but it's an important not only have blind passengers, we have hearing impaired passengers. Yesterday, we had a passenger come onto the MTRA Facebook page, and he's a blind passenger, Steve Cook, and he missed his 501 on the way home because the system was not for him. Obviously, this is a problem, being that he's blind, he cannot see the bus. We have people who are hearing impaired, and so I put forward on our Facebook page that maybe the drivers would turn it up more. But I was informed by a driver who passed it that the system created in such a way that it's automatically programmed. So if it's turned up, the driver has to contact IT, which has to contact you guys, and they have to change the system. If you're hearing impaired or elderly or disabled, this can be a problem. As far as the timeliness of it, what the MTRA and the comment over the years have agreed upon, and if you, I understand that you are, I'm raising this because I know from past meetings that you are training new drivers, that the drivers start making the announcements by the, when they're about to turn the corner onto Sumter or Laurel. And that's always worked pretty well. So what I'm here to ask is if you would look at the system, as well as reminding the drivers of the timeliness. The more veteran drivers are already aware of this. But to look at the system, not only as far as the buses are concerned, but also at the transit center, because it has happened that the buses, it can be working on the buses, but if the speakers aren't working properly at the transit center, then obviously the riders aren't going to hear it. And then the drivers and you guys always get blamed, okay? And the drivers work really hard. So if you would really look into that, it would be much appreciated, especially bearing into mind that maybe there could be a system where the drivers could turn it up so that older people or people who have, more difficulty hearing can hear the system. So that's what I wanted to address. Walter did want me to ask if there was something wrong with the number 4 because he hadn't seen it lately, but that's basically what I wanted to. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that will bring us to item 5, the call to the public. I didn't see anyone else signed up. Okay, on the call to the public. Thank you. That'll bring us to item 6, our discussion and action items. 6A is our service update. Mr. Cooksey.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Mack, I'll be filling in for Mr. Cooksey today. Thank you for allowing me to speak. The first thing I want to touch on is, of course, our employee recognition we had for last month. I can tell you, for me as a manager, one of the best things that I do is have the opportunity to recognize employees for all their hard work and dedication. And again, we have recognized 4 of our operators for over 40 years of service and 2 for over 30 years of service. And again, we want to thank the Comet for working hand in hand with RHEB Dev to recognize those drivers. It's very important that we show our drivers how much we appreciate all their hard work. And we behind that wheel for 40 plus years, providing a vital service to the community is something that's worth being recognized, and I think it's outstanding. On our COVID health watch, we did not have any reports of COVID for the month of March. I'm kind of new here to Columbia, and I'm realizing that the pollen is a serious issue because my allergies have been acting up very bad. So that's something I have to deal with. Operational, on-time performance for the month of March was 75.98. That was a 0.94% increase from February. We are scheduled to do a new sign up to go live on May the 5th. And we have been working with the Comet to still make improvements on some of the routes. So hopefully the work that we're doing will continue to see an increase in our on-time performance to make it better. We keep this trend up. For DART services, their on-time performance for March was 93.43%, 3.1% increase compared to February. Good job to Team DART. From the maintenance side of the house, total miles between roll calls was 12,095. As far as PM schedule, we had 58 PM scheduled. We completed 58, so we had on time performance for PMs of 100%. Customer service for the month of March, we had a total of 30 customer complaints compared to 56 in February. So that was a 39.54% decrease from the previous months. The safety category decreased by 19. And we, of course, contribute that to all the safety training that we do on a monthly basis for the drivers. And also on the complaint side, when we do receive a complaint and we investigate it and we find out that it is a justified complaint, our process is that we do bring the driver in and conduct counseling and retraining on what the proper procedure or the policy is that you should follow to prevent that type of complaint from occurring again. On the safety side of the house, we had a total of, let's see what we have. 4 accidents. Out of the 4, 1 was preventable. We had a total of 1 on-the-job injuries. Covering our KPIs, I keep touching on the OTP. Again, it was 75.98, and DOTS was 93.43. The contract goal is 85% for fixed route and 90% for DOT. Miles between roll call KPI indicator performance is 12,000 miles. Again, we hit 12,095. Customer service complaints is 6 per 10,000 customers. We was at 12.12, and our preventable accidents contract goal is 2. We was at 0.10 for the month of March. All right, on the staffing side of the house right now, we have a total of 11 operators in training. We do have a 3 that's going through classroom training. We still not at full staff for operators, but it is anticipated that hopefully by the end of May, we should be up to full staff. Of course, our staffing does affect our on-time performance somewhat. We have a lot of call outs. We may start service late on some routes, and we have to catch up with that service. But our HR is doing a great job at recruiting and getting operators in the door. And of course, we continuously do our walk-in Wednesday, and we did do a job fair last Thursday that we had about 4 people come in. But we keep getting the word out to get more operators here to join Team Comet, which I like to call the flagship Comet. And that's it for my report. I'm open for any questions.
Thank you. As you mentioned pollen, I was thinking it's probably a big job to get all that pollen off the buses. Right? So much of them, get them clean. Any other questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none. That will move us to 6B, our Lucius and River update. Mr. Pearl, I understand you have an update.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. We received results back from Terracon and have recently, as of this morning, met with Terracon and with Brownstone and Cherokee and come up with a resolution for the issue that we're having over there. And they will begin reviewing what their plan is and provide a quote. We are having Terracon work and help facilitate and coordinate to ensure that the project is completed as suggested by Terracon. And I don't have a timeline yet. I'm hoping that once we receive the quote, they'll begin to work on that, and we'll have that at least the project started by the end of the month. So I'll keep the board up to date on that as we go through committees and as well as in board meetings. But I feel confident with the resolution that Terracon has presented, and they're sticking on as a consultant to ensure that project is completed appropriately.
Thank you. I think that's positive. I see Mr. Green has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a question for Director Pearl. Is the Comet paying any money on this, or is this being paid for by the contractor?
After speaking with legal counsel, Comet will pay for this part of the construction.
Okay. Will that funding come before the board again or not?
It's under the limit. I will advise the board what that dollar amount is. As of right now, it's under or going to be at or under 30,000.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Any further comments or questions? Okay, glad to hear that update. That brings us to 6C, our Vision 2040 committee, or and I see that we have 6CA, advancement of projects. Mr. Pearl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the board meeting that was held a couple of weeks ago, the board was provided information on projects that we would like to have the board advance forward. The county council is requesting this information as well, and we have a list of the projects, and I don't think that we have that for this meeting, but the first project was a microtransit service in Lower Richland to facilitate more service in that area. In looking at the service that we provide now, it's a 2-hour bus route, and we want to be able to have more service in that area. So that would be our first project. The second is having any out-of-town service that's not within our core service area. And the third is increasing frequency on our 01 routes and providing, instead of half-hour service, we can get to 20 or 15-minute service. And so we're building up. The overall goal for that is to build up our core first, take care of what we need to first, Lower Richland, the 01s, and then move forward from there with expanding the service out.
Great. Any questions from the board? Comments? Yes, Mr. Brennan.
So Director Pearl, you said the county requested this list. What is it? Part of the penny funding? What are we talking about here?
Yes, sir. That's correct. It is part of the penny. They are moving forward and advancing with their initiative and getting that out. The county is requesting our dollar amount, so they can combine that with what's currently being proposed for roads and trailways, and they're needing what our advancement is for the projects.
So the number that you're going to advance to them is our total overall budget.
It is our current budget is supported heavily by the penny, and that's at 61%. So we have factored that into the recommendations, and that comes up to just under 900 million for 15 years. So whatever the county council determines that dollar amount or the year will get, but as of right now, it's 40-40-20, 20% being for the Comet, which they need this information to advance on adding that into what they currently have for projects.
So the board isn't going to take a vote to support that strategy. You're just advancing it, is what you're telling us.
No. So So what we're hoping that we can have a discussion about today and get a recommendation from this board to report back to the county.
Okay.
Yes. So that's the idea. And maybe now would be a good time for me to share the projected dollar amounts for collections. So essentially we had a couple meetings yesterday regarding the penny, potential new penny. And so we're looking at, so for 15-year projections, $2.2 billion. And then if we take a 20% out of that, That brings the comments portion to 442 million and 442.5 million essentially. And so then if you divide that up, so divide that number, that 20% number up by 15 years, you're getting about $29.5 million per year for the comet from the penny. That's what my calculation gets me to. So I guess our question is, what does the comet need, right? And what do we need to go back to, what do we need to go back to the county with a number about? Because, you know, maybe we need to ask the county or tell the county that we need a higher percentage, or maybe we need to make a recommendation that we go to a longer collection period.
I think that's the root of it right there.
Okay.
Madam Chairman.
Okay.
I don't think we should settle for 15 as a common board. I mean, to truly build out world-class transit system that we all envision, we need that 20-year base minimum. It's not worth our time to have this discussion in what, 9 years probably to redo it after 15 years. So that would be my first recommendation, Madam Chairwoman, is that we put forward an agreement that we all agree on. 20 years is the term.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I spoke with Councilman Walker several days ago and said in county literature, y'all using the term new penny jacks. That's a death nail right there. Rather than a continuation of the penny.
That's a great piece of feedback, that would be that we would just continue on with the program that we have. I will take that. I think that sometimes with attorneys, and like when you have an old thing and a new thing, they like to put new whatever in it, almost like a legal term. But in terms of marketing and outreach, I think that that's a great point. Thank you.
You say new penny, everybody think that's an additional penny. Yeah. You know, right off the bat.
Yeah. So I'm seeing a lot of head nods for that. I will share that with my colleagues for sure. Thank you. Any other feedback?
One other thing. If the calculations, the county is using it's anywhere near the comet's budget now, that won't get us where we want to be. See, this new budget and what we hope to get out of the new penny is something, 21st century, because that's where we are building. And we have no idea what a new intermodal system costs, whether the components or what new equipment. We're talking millions that we don't have an idea what's even on the market. But if we trying to get the penny the same as what we already have, we aren't gonna make it where we want. The county may make it, but the county won't.
I think I saw Dr. Morris.
Yeah, my concern is similar to Mr. Burgess, and in the form of a question. Did we take a look at how much it's going to cost, knowing that you got inflation, we're going to need more dollars, and yet we say 20% will be sufficient? I think we really need to study this, and I'm asking, have you done that?
So, and I'll let Mr. Pearl, do you want to hop in here?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. We have, when the CFO, Ms. Andrews, and I went through the budget, it's estimated at a 6% increase annually. So that's our base. We have seen significant increases across the board. So 6% is a good, confident percentage for us to increase annually. The projects that are presented help build and facilitate our core and what we're trying to work for. As Mr. Fergus had said, to elevate the Comet and make us a world-class organization, and one that peers in other transit systems in other states look at as we want to focus on what they're doing, because they're doing it right, and they're taking care of our passengers in our community. And these are recommendations based on past experience that's being presented to the board for your approval to advance forward.
Yes.
Just a couple clarifying questions that I think kind of piggyback on previous questions. So the proposal now to structure the penny, does it have the same, we've got a timeline, but we also had a cap on the previous iteration.
Yeah.
Is it similar?
It will be a year or a dollar amount, because I think that's a legal requirement.
You have both. You gotta
Yes.
hit one or the other first.
For the referendum, we have to ask, we have to give those two parameters.
So, I mean, and the reason I bring that up is because our experience with this one was that we got to getting to the cap far quicker than the timeline we thought. Exactly. So to Brendan's point, even if we say 20 years, it might get there 15. And to the point about inflation, I think part of the reason we collected it so quickly is inflationary pressures drove up all the, sales or sales amounts. So theoretically, we would track along with inflation, but the problem with that is we might get to the end of the term quicker. I think just as long as we're kind of I wanted to make sure I understood that correctly. And the other on what we're talking about today, so we've got a kind of theoretical percentage of the penny that would be for operations. But if I'm hearing correctly, there's also this input we're giving for capital projects.
No, we, so this collections cannot really go towards anything capital. That would be a different kind of penny that we would put on the ballot. Yes.
So the projects we're talking about providing input at the county would be what sort of things?
Basically our operations and expanding of operations, but we cannot do things like, and I wish, Attorney Heiser.
And I don't know that I need it answered right now.
Yes.
I think as we have these discussions, clarification about kind of what it is and the reason I ask is because I think I heard one number for our 20% theoretical 20% and another much higher number, which would include the projects that we're providing input on. Is that right? Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, I mean, but really the most important, and one thing can't happen without the other in a lot of ways, but the most important thing is that we get a recommendation from this board back to the county so that we can be included, because they're moving forward. And it was very clear yesterday afternoon that they will keep going even if we don't hop on the bus.
I see.
Right. Okay. So we have to get on this. Attorney Heiser, I called your name just because I wanted to get like a very brief reminder of what the transportation penny is allowed to be spent on.
Sure. Based on both the language in the statute and Supreme Court ruling, the transportation penny can be spent on capital needs such as roads, bridges, drainage associated with roadways, etc. It can also be spent on projects directly related to transportation, which would be mass transit. And so the necessary operating expenses for mass transit is a project that's allowable under the capital project sales tax. General operating expenses for the county would not be that type of project. So a special category is carved out for operations related to mass transit.
Okay. And so we can't do things like build a building with those funds, correct?
No, I'm sorry. The mass transit, the Comet, can use the penny for both capital. So yes, bricks and mortar, and for operating. And the county can only use this penny for bricks and mortar, or let's just call it concrete and asphalt. So there are two categories for the comment. One is capital, and the other would be necessary and appropriate operating expenses.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Brennan.
Can you confirm that it's a dollar amount and a time period?
It's either or. It's the earlier of a dollar amount or a number of years.
Gotcha.
We have to include both those numbers on the referendum. Yes.
So the obviously for this current penny, the estimate of collections was too conservative, and so we are coming up now, instead of 20 or 22 years, more like 12 years. So I think that on a going forward basis, the county is going to be maybe more realistic or less conservative than originally. So you've got a larger dollar amount. And as far as the number of years, as some of y'all have recognized, if you're only going to do something for like 10 years, then that's an awful lot of trouble to go to every 10 years that you might want to look at a 15 or 20 year time frame. And if I could elaborate a little bit on what the county is asking for, I have been contacted by one of the attorneys working for the county, and it's like, we the county, we are moving forward, and we need to know what the comment needs or wants. And so the original 40-40-20, I think, is a placeholder, but it is the comment's obligation to provide a list of projects and a number to the county that would justify more than 20%. And I think that's what we are talking about today.
Yes. Yes. We need essentially our ask for what our projects are, and a number. And if that number ends up being a higher percentage, we can shift the number, but we've got to have a number that we're asking for. So, and I think that we have a number. The comment has calculated our number, and is now the time to kind of bring that number into the discussion, and then kind of compare that to what the collection projections look like. Would that be the next right step in this conversation?
Madam Chair.
I think that it would, and I think Mr. Pearl may want to elaborate, but I heard the number of 900 million, and so maybe a little more explanation of what that number gets us, or how that number was arrived, or how that number was derived.
Thank you, Ms. Heiser. As presented at the last called board meeting, excuse me, it was the projects that and the recommendations for the board to consider and advance forward is the micro transit service. And I don't have the specific numbers for that in front of me right now, but I believe that we're around 42 million, 30 to 40 million for that project, and that's annually.
Is that I'm sorry,
over 15 years.
Is that to implement a plan that we haven't done yet?
Correct. Yes. All of the recommendations that were presented at the last board meeting are new service that is recommended to the board for us to put out additional service and make sure that we cover the areas that we need to, and increase the service levels in the areas that we need to provide better service to our customers.
Okay, so we have a number, does not necessarily match the 20% of the projected income or collection. Sorry.
Does the ask change if we request going for 20 years, Director Pearl? I mean, can the funding still keep up with that total overall number? You said it's 15 years, $900 million.
Yes, sir. That's what we're asking for. So if the county were to modify that to go to, they presented 15, 19, 20, and then 25 years with varying amounts that they will collect throughout that time. So once the board decides what projects to, or all of the projects to advance forward, then that dollar amount will be added to what the county and the city is presenting. And then at that point, the county council will decide at what year they need to go to, or what dollar amount they need to go to.
Does that $900 million after 15 years pay for all of the operations for the Comet?
It pays it stays at the status quo level of
60-40.
61% of our budget.
That was good. That's good enough.
Yes.
And that's with no expanded, that's with no added route, no out of town, no increasing frequency? Or is that with those items?
That is with those items.
That is with those items. Okay. Yes, of course.
Would you clarify, 900,000 does not include capital? Is that correct?
Capital, as far as the facilities,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
And I believe Councilwoman Heiser had discussed that is something that the Comet can do. Is that
Yeah, I think she's.
Yes.
correct? That's what I heard. Yes.
Yes.
Correct. We could capital expenditures directly related to transit would be an approved use of the penny.
And that was 900 million.
900 million, yes.
900 million. Yes, sir.
Now at 900 million, is that at 20%?
No.
That's a lot
No,
more.
is it
No.
less?
It's way more.
It's way more. So
Oh,
essentially that would be double. I mean, so if we're looking at 442 million, 442.5 million for the 15-year collection, and that's with the Comet getting 20%. So if we needed 900 million for that 15-year period, that would be a much higher percentage of the penny. I mean, essentially, it's pretty close to half. I don't have all my spreadsheets in front of me. I just have paper, and I'm kind of doing things in my head. So I think this board needs to have a realistic discussion about what we really need in terms of a dollar amount. I don't necessarily think, this is just my opinion, I don't necessarily think we need to get stuck on a percentage. Like that's a 40-40-20 is a very clean percentage, but we need to ask for the dollar amount we need and then work from there. And like Councilman Brennan said, maybe it looks more like an ask for a longer collection period as well. So again, I really just want to hear from the board about, do we need to, for instance, this is just putting this out here, not necessarily my opinion or anything, but like, do we need to take off increasing frequency, and what does that do for our ask number? Or do we need to ask for the full amount and then have the county come back to the Comet with a different, more of a conversation about what's realistic?
Well, it seems to me that it's a lot easier to negotiate higher number down. So, and if you use the dollar figure, you're not confined by a percentage. I think that sounds like a good strategy.
Right. So I'm hearing that a potential motion could be around a dollar figure that we would recommend to the county. Am I hearing anything about a number of years? And I had heard Councilman Brennan float 20 years. Okay.
I'm sure. I just need some more clarity of this $900 million. Director Pearl, $900 million is the 60% figure. So you're telling me there's another 40% to run the Comet for 15 years? So something like our budget for 15 years is $1.6 billion.
That covers, excuse me, that covers the current dollar amount that we locally obtain to cover the rest of the budget.
The 900 million is the local collect and the 60-40 equation. 40% comes from other grants and federal avenues.
Okay, I see Attorney Kaiser's hand up.
I just wanted to mention that the dollar number needs to be related to the length of time established for the penny. So if it's $900 million for 15 years, it would be more than 900 million for 20 years. And so in whatever discussions the Comet has with the county, the amount per year is going to be very important to keep in mind that and 900 million, Mr. Pearl, is that for a 15-year sales tax or for a 20-year sales tax?
It's for 15-year.
15-year sales tax. So, at some point, the leadership in the county and the leadership here at the Comet need to have meaningful discussions and come up with either a dollar figure per year or whatever the decision is. But there's going to have to be an ask from the Comet and response from the county, and then maybe another back and forth to get to a final number. And as I think I said at the last meeting, the current percentage for the Comet was absolutely just a negotiated number that was largely based on a need to satisfy the Comet, but also satisfy the bike and pathway people, and to have as much as possible for the county for their asphalt and concrete.
That's helpful. Chair? Yes.
Ms. Herbert,
Oh, I'm sorry.
had a message.
Okay.
She said, for my clarity, 900 million gives us 60% for operations at status quo and building a next level system that we are planning.
So
Question.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
So, and let me say this out loud. So this is that number that we were talking about is with an added route in Lower Richland, our out of town service.
Yes.
And increasing frequency so that we can get to more of a 15 to 20 minute service. So those are the three kind of top line additions, if you might say. Yes.
Director Pearl, can you clarify what out of town service looks like, and if actual we can pay that with the penny? I mean, we crossing county lines. What's out of town defined as?
It would be, there are out of town requests that have been made. Leesburg has cropped up again and has had, I haven't had any discussions with them. Nothing's been discussed, but they have expressed an interest in.
I think that's something we have to get answered before we consider. I mean, can we cross county lines with Richland County funding? Brandy, can you answer that?
As a practical matter, I'm going to say no. Would it be legal? Potentially, particularly if you said, well, people that originated in Richland County would also benefit from service that goes into Lexington County. However, the history of service in Lexington County there's been a very, very solid position from the Richland County side of the river, if you will, that the penny should be spent on service inside Richland County. So out-of-town services might include an express route to Blythewood for the Scout Motors, or as Director Pearl also mentioned, more service into Eastover. But I think it would be very difficult to get Richland County Council and voters to agree to spending the penny on increased service in Lexington County. And that's not a judgment on my part. That's just an observation from what I have seen over the years.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
as for clarification, for when I think of out of town, I think outside of Columbia. So that does pertain to what potentially is going to occur with Scout Motors and Blythewood. So that's part of the consideration as well.
I will just speak up for Richland County. I never thought I would be a person that would say that this is a Richland County penny and not a Columbia penny. Yeah, I think is it possible to look at those numbers and remove an amount that was built into our 900 million from, let's call it item 2?
Sure.
Okay.
We can do that.
Now, what was item 2? Frequency.
The out-of-town service.
Oh.
So that's kind of what we were talking about.
I have to remember now, out-of-town service, with that Richland County penny, you have a big county that's growing.
That, and to your point, the focus of Lower Richland, Blythewood.
Yeah.
I think Director Pearl, you have that in mind.
So we'll call this a county-wide service. So should we maybe call what I'm calling item 2,
right,
call it more like expanded county-wide service? Okay.
Madam Chairman, I have to find that I think we need a little dose of reality here. I don't think we're going to get 40%. Penny. I'm just going to throw that out there. So let's get real about the kind of expectations of reeling back that number. But it's chicken and egg. We don't know what that number is going to be until we go through the planning process to put in this world-class transit system, right? So I don't really know what number to tag to it. I know I want to tag 20 years to it, but I don't know what number to base it off of that we know the county and the city and the comment can agree to. So I don't know if we're stuck or if we just need to throw a number out there and just start politicking.
Madam Chair.
Sure.
This once the board, the comment board advances this, it still has to go through the TPAC. The TPAC is going to be reviewing this as well, and they will provide a response to this, what we request, and that'll go to the county council as well. So it still has to filter out through a couple of different entities before it gets to the county council. But it's just we present the information or the number or what we're requesting for additional service, and then it filters through those entities, through those committees to the county council.
I believe they meet on May 6th, I believe. And then the transportation ad hoc meets the day after to take those recommendations into account.
I'm looking at my calendar. I don't have TPAC on my calendar but I do have transportation ad hoc on the 7th. So I think they do meet.
I think it's the day before.
The day before. So I'd like to have some number that can come out of this meeting to go to the county so that they can start having discussions. And I think that, like Councilman Brennan said, we need to be real. We need to be realistic I don't think we need to undercut ourselves in order to try to fit in a box. I mean, we see the numbers before us in terms of what collections might be. But we know what it costs to run the Comet. So further discussion. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? No. What can we come back to? Do we need to, let me ask a different question. What information could this board have presented to us that would help us to create a motion? Yes.
The types of things that I think I'd like to see to arrive at a number would be based on current service. You know, what would it take to sustain current service, given what we know about inflationary pressures over the next, likely inflationary pressures for the next 15 years? That sounds to me a lot like that first number, that 20%, that 29.5 million per year. Especially if we think about it in terms of receiving less than that at the beginning and more than that per year at the end.
Right,
that really sounds like
yes.
a good number to sustain what we have. But then to have the other items quantified in some way, and I realize it's very, pro forma at this point, we don't know for sure, but a sense for what, how reasonable is the ask to essentially double that baseline to get these things that we think are important for the and reasonableness as determined by a kind of, sounds like maybe the work's already been done, which it'd be nice, I think, for us to see, like, what does it take to do a micro transit in Lower Richland? How does that model out for 15 years? What does it take to expand service to potentially to the Scout Movage plant and to
have a model?
Yeah, and I'm not looking for like just spreadsheets and spreadsheets. I think a simple, maybe one-page model showing exactly what that would look like over 15 years and why we think it's going to cost that. That'd be really helpful, I think, for me to get some comfort around a big number like 900.
Sure. Question. Okay. Yes.
With your 900 million, you calculated all these things to get to that 900 million. Yes, sir. So would it be okay if that's the figure that went to the county and the county gonna whack down whatever you send anyway?
Right. So, Mr. Fergus, if I'm hearing you correctly, can we forward a number that gives what our baseline service is, what the additional service items would be, and just present that information to the county, and then let the county come back to us with questions, suggestions, and let, for instance, the TPAC committee see what the ask is, and then come back to us, and then make the recommendation to the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee, and then let it work its way through. So let me ask this question. Could staff be prepared to present a number, a year, and a list that this board could present to the county or could send over as a recommendation? Okay. Yes. I don't know, because we do not have this very specific thing in front of us today. I'm trying to think through, do we need to have this circulated to the board and then have another opportunity to vote between now and May the 6th. And I'm seeing Attorney Heiser come on. So
I would have a couple of suggestions. I think you now have an idea of the maximum amount of the 900 million based on a given number of years. You could delegate to your visions committee to work with the director to put a little more meat on those bones, so that you go to TPAC with that higher number, and then have opportunity for the county to respond, and then potentially have a special meeting to consider what the county's response is. In order to meet the county deadline, y'all will have to probably meet more than once a month in these next 2 months, because excuse me, the county, I think, is meeting almost weekly or every other week. And so there needs to be a willingness to meet at special meetings. But for this first effort of presenting what should be the maximum amount, you might just ask the director to work with the visions committee to get that ready to be presented to the CPAC or CPAC committee next week.
Is that
or have a special meeting?
Okay, thank you. Does the board have feedback or a motion given what Attorney Heiser has offered us?
Madam Chairman, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what a $100 million a year transit system looks like. We're clipping away at $45 million right now. And I think we do a good job, and there's growth to be had. I'd like to see more details about because if I'm asking for details and big picture vision of it, I know the voters are going to be asking too. So that's my holdup right now for trying to move anything forward.
Good input, yes. Given the local contribution plus the
right, the 60 million comes from the penny tax eventually, and then that would mean the 40. So I mean that's $100 million a year.
Right.
You can buy a bus for everybody, right?
Yes. So you want to respond to that? Do you want to give us some feedback in terms of why this number is the number given our baseline plus the vision for the future?
So yes, thank you, Madam Chair. What we did was we took our base budget, and then and it's a 15-year project. So the base budget was 6% each year. So we come up with that number over the 15 years. And I wish we had that information that was provided at the last board meeting, but that comes up to, I believe it's estimated 1.2 billion over a 15-year period. And then when we add on the projects, and it's the three projects, it's the Lower Richland and the out of town service, the increase in frequency on the 01 routes, as well as potential lease for the intermodal facility. So the intermodal facility, when we factor that in, it's 100 million over the 15-year period. The others are around, I believe, and I know Donald Reed is looking for that as well, but it's a much smaller number for the other information, for the other service that's going to be added as well. So I can resend that out to the board on the percentages, that 6%, and it outlines our base budget, and then it goes by year up to 15 years what that base amount is for the budget. And then if we add certain services, whether it's 1 and 3 and 4, or 1 and 4, or 3 and 4, whatever that number is, it in the spreadsheet, it has that down at the bottom what that dollar is.
Okay. I'm happy to listen to other folks. Yes, Ms. Bonner Reed.
You want me to reprint it and distribute it?
I think that might be helpful, as this board probably wants something tangible to hold and look at. And while we're doing that, one thought that I had was just around, again, my North Star here is around the rider experience, right? Are we giving people the opportunity to get on a bus at a frequency that is useful for their life and get where they need to go in a timely fashion? And so, I'm looking at the things that are going to be the most impactful to a rider. And I think definitely an added route, increased frequency, those kinds of things are very impactful. And I don't want to go, and at the same time, I don't want to go, another 15, 20 years and not move us forward in terms of a truly modern vision, like for an intermodal facility. So to me, it's tough, but this is where we have to kind of lean in and make some decisions. I'm open to just hear other folks' thoughts on this. And I know these papers are going to be coming around soon. Okay.
That's just the initial copy. We can make more copies.
Okay. Yeah.
Chair, on the then we estimate a base premium at about $6 million a year.
What did we?
About 6.
What?
And that when you add an
That's
inflation
capital lease, yeah.
So
for 15 years.
That'll be set. There won't be any inflation on that.
right. I mean, that's a static number.
Why 6%? Why not something like 3%?
Increase. Engines 3 years ago cost us $25,000. They're upwards over 50,000 now. Our parts have increased over 50%, and it's not letting up. So the 6% covers us. We have just seen dramatic increases in parts, and as well as the labor. We don't know what fuel is going to be as well going forward.
Is all that in a written summary? Because that's, the transportation committee asked why 6%. That's real life right there. Like, that's for us to deliver people. They need to know that. Is that going to be included in our description that we send forward?
Yes.
Okay.
My question is, do you feel real comfortable with your data that you've got?
Yes, we've worked with a consultant. Miss Andrews and I worked with the consultant on this information on breaking down what our current budget is, what our increase is for our baseline over 15 years, and then the number of hours that, because we factor in hours for service, and what that is for Lower Richland, what that is for the increasing in frequency for the 01 route. So we add in those hours, and then that's where our bottom line comes in. So we worked through this process to make sure that we have pretty solid hours as well as the funding amount.
I'm thinking we ought to go with it. Because my feeling is, if we aren't selling ourselves short with the number, by the number being large doesn't impact us, is once it get to the county and the city get involved, we may have to move out of this building, can't pay the rent. You know, it may be just how they whack it up, you know, because I heard that the county put state roads back into their ass.
In
No.
the 40, in one of those 40% numbers.
Yes.
So there's, I'll just read out what the other, so the categories that the 240% categories proposed are what's called community investment projects. So those would be things like, you know, basic road repavements, sidewalks, pedestrian, all of those kinds of things. And then there's another county category called county advancement projects. And so this would be things like making sure that we have the kind of infrastructure that allows for our growth and attractiveness to industry and business. So that's a very short way to say that. But those are the two 40% categories. And then the third category is what is listed as COMET enhancement projects at 20%. And that includes all of the things that we can spend penny money on for the COMET. So yes, we're going to have to get get real with some conversations with a lot of folks. Thank you, Ms. Viner Reed, for printing those out for us.
It's printed on.
I printed on the big paper. Okay. So you have room for notes.
Yes. I apologize for that.
Thank you. And this is on. So I think it's like page 5 or 5 that we just got handed out. 5 and 6.
So, Madam Chair, if there is a due date on us giving them this number, if we add it, could we have a couple of weeks? Sounds like they're moving forward. So we've got to come up with.
We need some kind of emotion. Yeah, I'll just be honest. We need some kind of emotion coming out of this meeting. That is a form of emotion similar to what Attorney Heiser suggested. So that's where we are.
So they have to have, now it doesn't go directly to the county from a motion we make here. Does it go through the committees first, or is that part of the county?
So we would communicate that with county staff. So I guess the procedure would be a motion would come out of this meeting. The language of that motion would get forwarded to county staff, and then county staff would then assign it to, you know, they would compile it with all of the other materials that they're compiling for consideration by the Transportation Penny Ad Hoc or Advisory Committee, and then the Transportation Ad Hoc Committee. Getting those languages those right. Okay. So those two things. And then out of the work of those committees, then we would get information to council. And then that's what would form the actual language of how we would move the referendum forward. Okay. So that's just a basic how those things work together.
What would be the ETA on when that would actually happen? When it would get to council? When does council looking to have this on it?
So I have a timeline here. Okay, I'm glad I left all this in my bag. Okay, so Yesterday, April 23rd, Transportation Ad Hoc Committee met, and we also had a work session for full council. On May 6th, the Transportation Penny Advisory Committee will meet, and they will discuss allocation of funds to categories. So that is why our meeting today is so important, because if we don't have something to send to these folks by May the 6th, and I guess I will also say that if this body decides that we don't have a motion coming out of today, we could meet next Wednesday. Or, you know, but sometime before May the 6th, we have got to have something to these folks, or they will move without us.
Yes.
But our numbers won't change between now and next Wednesday, right? Because you presented what you felt.
Right. What would change between now and then? That's a good question.
So I think we have a better chance getting $900 million over 20 years, but that's some good faith that we get other sources of revenue.
Right. Yes, Mr. Smith.
So just so that I understand, this chart that we have with a total at the end of 1.45 billion, we're asking for essentially 60%, 61%. That's how we got to our almost 900 million. So then when we go to the TPAC committee that's going to look at first, will we hand them this and say, this is how we got to our number, and discuss it with them, say, historically, the penny has covered 60% of our budget. That's how we arrived at, because I think that's maybe the piece that I have been comfortable with saying yes to that number, because I remember seeing this in your earlier memo, so Director Pearl, but I didn't make the link. This is how we got to our number. I think I'm more comfortable. It's still very abstract because it's still like a round number and it's in the hundreds of millions. It's kind of hard, but at least I see the logic of where we're going and what we're telling the county we would get with that. And so that's helpful. We've got it listed: microtransit, out of town. We'll define what that means. Then talking about it, at the end, we kind of have this section about intermodal lease, so that we're talking about future infrastructure and that sort of thing. I'm more comfortable having seen this if I know that all of that is presented kind of in a fairly robust way with logic behind it, if that makes sense.
Would it be, so again, I'm kind of circling back to Attorney Heiser, would it be acceptable, or could we think of a motion where we could direct Mr. Pearl to work with our Vision 2040 committee to put together a packet proposal to be sent to the county that would include this cost projection and a explanation of what these items are? So the expense increase existing service, microtransit, and what I'm going to call countywide, and frequency, adding frequency to existing routes. Could we have a motion that looked something like that?
Yes. Someone should say, "I so move."
Okay.
So basically, what you're asking is for the administration to work with the Visions Committee to prepare a package to deliver to the TPAC that is consistent with what you've discussed today, which is the inflationary factors on existing service, potential new service in terms of around Richland County, and the frequency of service, and have a presentation ready for the TPAC committee. I think you could make that motion. I think the information is pretty much already there. It probably just needs to be packaged up. And I would say that if it's the consensus of the board that the out-of-town service be considered Richland County wide service, and that it not really include too much service in Lexington County.
Okay.
But and I guess you'd ask Mr. Pearl if he feels comfortable that he knows what he's being asked to do and what the expectations are.
With a motion like that, would you be clear on
Yes,
your instructions? Okay. What do I hear from my fellow board?
So moved.
I hear a so moved.
Second.
I hear a second. Further discussion.
I think Attorney Heiser should word that and send it to us in writing.
Okay, Attorney Heiser, can you kind of formulate that into I guess, well, actually our board secretaries probably.
Yeah.
I have it recorded.
Okay, it's recorded and it will become part of our minutes. So I don't think we necessarily need that. Thank you for that suggestion though. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, yes.
In the form of a meeting session,
Well,
or is that going to be discussed?
it's the committee's, Mr.
We-
Burgess, overture myself.
Yeah, because you're putting together a packet. I guess I'm asking, it could actually just be a work session and not a
committee meeting.
Yeah, it's up to the will of the board.
I would defer to my Vision 2040 committee
Yeah, a work session.
work session. Yeah. Okay, I'm hearing us a work session. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Further discussion. Hearing and seeing none, we'll take the vote on the motion. Mr. Brennan.
Yes.
Mr. Burgess.
Yes.
Ms. Wheaton.
Ms. Wheaton.
Ms. Herbert.
Wait a minute. Ms. Wheaton.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Ms. Herbert.
Yes.
Representative Howard, Mr. Lawson, Dr. Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Racio,
Yes.
Mr. Umthank,
Yes.
Mr. Walker. We have a motion passes.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for their work on this. We're not done yet. We've got to really, there's some work ahead of us. But thank you all for that. That brings us to item 7, our motions period. Are there any motions? Hearing and seeing none. We'll move forward to our progress reports. I do not have a chair report. I think you've heard enough from me. The committee chairs, do we have a service committee update, Mr. Burgess?
Service did have a motion, but I think Mr. Pearl took care of that. You didn't need a motion to the board to purchase those filters. Do you need a motion?
No, sir. That was a motion that was in the service committee.
Yeah.
And it didn't need to get forwarded to us? Or was it part of the
I think it was
consent
in the
calendar?
budget.
See, that was just 5,000 and that's in your spending.
You have the.
Okay.
Mhm.
Great, thank you. Anything further, Mr. Burgess?
No.
Okay. That brings us to item 8B, Finance Committee.
Did not have meeting because we didn't have. However, we did have discussion. Hopefully, we would have enough of it at the next meeting.
Thank you. And as chair, I will work on making sure that you have the right number of members. That will bring us to 8C, our intermodal committee updates. Mr. Brennan.
No report at this time, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. That will bring us to our executive staff updates. Mr. Pearl, anything further for us?
Just the report out on page 86, as you can see there, just meetings that have been attended, the post and courier interview, and then through operations, we've been working on APCs and ensuring that those are working properly throughout the whole system. So we're continuing to monitor that, and just our daily communication with our other interested parties, USC, and we have been out for procurement for a on-time performance, as Mr. Mack stated earlier. They're trying to, from their standpoint, address the on-time performance. We have a consultant that we want to advance forward to look at our on-time performance, as well as a routing that goes into downtown to the Comet Central to try to reduce the number of vehicles that are downtown and modify some of our service. So that is being moved forward, and that's under the dollar amount, the 100,000 under my purview. But I wanted to advise the board that we are moving forward with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions or feedback from the board? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move to our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Andrews.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay, but I have nothing more to report than what's on the papers in front of you, but I am open to questions if you have any.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anything here in the room or on the screen. So that will bring us to C, our Civil Rights Officer, Dr. Prince.
Okay, good afternoon, and I'll be very brief. I just want to share that FTA had indicated earlier that they would be doing the tri-annual review July 17th through 19th, and we were contacted earlier, and they would like to change the schedule. So they would like to conduct a virtual tri-annual review August 12th through 14th. So those are the new dates that we have on our calendar. And also just two last things in terms of DBE goals for the Comet, we are at 25.5% of our 25% goal. And when it comes to our contractor RATP Dale, they're at 22.4% of the 20.06%. So both areas are on target and still on time in terms of what meeting our DBE goal. Okay, unless there are questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Hearing and seeing none, that will bring us to D, our Public Information Officer.
Good afternoon, members of the board, staff, and guests. My report is in the last one in the packet, and I just want to call your attention to the fact that we are now beginning to add our proof of performance as far as our advertising, where we are placing, whether it's print ads or out of home or billboards, or if it's broadcast media, those will be in the packets moving forward. And also, we have launched on our website the information about the penny and our progress over the last 10 years. And if I may share my screen. Actually, where the website is under About Us. We go here. Well, actually, that's not the updated one. Under About Us, it says Richland County penny tax. And basically, it is the deconstruction of the presentation with other information and also a link to Richland County's penny website. So for anybody who wants any information about how well we did with the current penny, all of that is right here. And this is actually a very dynamic page because we can add things to it as we progress along, including our vision for the next penny. And we have testimonials as well. Great. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gleaton. We do have one item for executive session. 9A is a legal/contractual personnel matter. I don't think this will be a long discussion necessarily, but I do think I need to take the time to do it. Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Thank you. Seconded. take the vote to go to executive session. Mr. Brennan, Ms. Gleaton, Dr. Morris, Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
Ms. Racio. Yes. Mr. Unthank.
Yeah.
Mr. Walker. Motion carried. Thank you. We'll give staff a few minutes to get moving, and then as the Zoom to get set up, and we'll reconvene in a moment. Is there a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
I second.
Okay, moved and properly seconded. We will take the vote to come out of executive session.
Mr. Brennan.
Yes.
Mr. Furtis.
Yes.
Ms. Gleaton. Yeah. Ms. Herbert.
Yes.
Representative Howard, Mr. Lawson, Dr. Morris,
Yes.
Mr. Smith, Ms. Racio,
Yes.
Mr. Unthank,
Yes.
Councilman Walker. Motion carries.
Thank you. We were in executive session to discuss a legal contractual personnel matter. No action was taken in executive session. Is there a motion regarding that item?
Yes. I move that our attorney review the contract and come back to the board with a suggestion for a bonus.
Thank you. Heard a motion, seconded. Okay. Further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we'll take the vote on that motion.
Okay, Mr. Brennan.
Yes.
Mr. Furtis.
Yes.
Ms. Gleaton. Yes. Ms. Herbert.
Yes.
Representative Howard, Mr. Lawson, Dr. Morris.
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Tracio,
Yes.
Mr. Unthank,
Yes.
Councilman Walker, motion carries.
All right. Thank you. That will bring us to item 10, adjournment. Is there a motion? Moved. Seconded?
Second.
Okay. We'll take the vote to adjourn. All in favor? All right. Any opposed? Thank you for your work today.